Hello, my name is Doug Dedman. I'm the president and principal of DBM Systems. At DBM, we're all about helping companies unlock the value of sales and operations planning. Over the past little while, we've covered the basics of S&OP and other videos on our channel. And now that we have that experience working with the basics, I'd like to cover what I would consider the 3 key fundamentals to making S&OP really work effectively. These key points are, first, having a good process. Secondly, having the correct family structure. And finally, supporting this with the right data and the right visualization of that data. If you read any literature or have taken any courses on sales and operations planning, you may be familiar with the diagram that's on the screen. It's the classic. S&OP is about balancing demand and supply. It's a great visualization on what we're trying to achieve with the S&OP process. But what it doesn't really tell us is, how do we actually achieve this? So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to dive into how do we make S&OP work? How do we achieve this balance? And as I said before, it comes down to 3 things: process, families, and data. So there's a lot to cover in these 3. So in this video, I'll start with the basics, then we'll further unpack these topics in future videos. To start this discussion, I'd like to take a slightly different look at the balancing problem we're trying to solve within the S&OP process. Instead of just thinking about balancing demand and supply, I'd like you to think about S&OP as developing a plan to manage between external or an unconstrained view of the business and your internal or the constrained view of the business. The best way to do this is, let's just consider a line through the middle of the page or the screen. Above that line is your market or your customers. This is the unconstrained view or the external view of your business. What will your customers take of your product or service? We do have the ability to influence what customers will take with pricing, market promotions, product, etc. But ultimately, our customers control what they want to buy and when they want it, and in many cases, how quickly they would like to have it, with really no regard for what our ability to supply is or what our constraints are. Now, below this line is our constraint or internal view. This is what we can produce or what we can supply. This output is constrained by our investment in equipment or capacity, our inventory levels, our staffing, or supply chain capability. You can think about this as things that we control, decisions we've made, things we can control. So then S&OP is about getting the best possible view of what is above the line, our unconstrained demand, and determining how we either deliver this with our current capabilities or how do we have to change our capability to meet this demand. This all brings me back to my 3 points on making S&OP really work: process, family structure, and data. So let's look at these 3 elements and how they straddle the line, if you will, helping us balance between the external and the internal view. So first, let's start with process. When it comes to the S&OP process, I really subscribe to a very standard approach to the monthly S&OP process. I'm talking about really the series of meetings that occur during the month leading up to the executive S&OP meeting. I'll speak briefly about each step in the monthly process and how it helps you move between the external view of the business and the internal view. As I mentioned before, I'll do a deeper dive into each of these topics in another video, but I will cover just the basics here. So the first meeting is the pre-S&OP demand meeting. This should clearly be above the line. This is where we answer the question of, what does demand look like? In this meeting, we agree on the unconstrained demand plan. The responsibility and accountability for this view of demand lies in one or a combination of the following areas of the organization. So listen carefully. It's sales, marketing, or in some cases, product management. It needs to be based on reality, but we don't want to constrain this demand right from the beginning. So as such, operations should really not be running this meeting. They can participate, but We're looking for the external unconstrained view, so that's really the demand side of the organization. The second meeting is the pre-S&OP operations meeting. This meeting is below the line. We take the input from the demand meeting, the new unconstrained demand, and determine if we can meet it or if we need to constrain that. I'm using the term operations rather broadly here. Really, we need to consider all aspects of supply, including supply chain. Can we meet the unconstrained demand? If we can't, we need to come up with what a constrained shipment plan would be. And if we can, great, our job's much easier. Once we determine what that constrained shipment plan is, we're ready to move to the next step, which is the pre-S&OP meeting. This meeting clearly sits on the line between the external and internal view. In this meeting, this is where we're determining how we're going to balance our constraints against our unconstrained demand. This may involve decisions around allocation and future capacity. It's really the working meeting where the approach is agreed on and really requires input and direction from both the sales or the demand side and the operations side. And once we have that done, we're ready to move to the executive meeting. So in that final meeting, the executive meeting, I put this below the line because either this is where we're getting to the final agreement on the plan that fits within our current constraints, or we're making adjustments to those constraints, either up or down, which is all part of that executive process. So having a good process with clearly identified responsibilities and accountabilities and meeting outcomes is critical to making S&OP work. As I mentioned before, I cover this in more details in another video, which you can find by following the link below. This brings us to the second key to making S&OP work, which is family structure. Here's where my view may differ from some other people's views on how to do this, but let me give you some reasoning. S&OP families, the collection of products that are put together to provide the level of granularity for S&OP decision makings, need to start below the line. They need to be defined by constraint. And this is pretty important. The constraint view of families will correlate to a specific capability. Most typically, it's linked to a production line or cell in a plant, but in some cases, this may be a specific material that sets the upper limit of supply. In services, this might even be tied to a specific type of resource. In order to balance the plan, you need to have a clear understanding of what your current constraints are. Are they right-sized, or do they need to be changed? I sum up this problem in a real simple statement. If you can't build it, you can't sell it. Changing your supply level or capability typically means changing your constraints. Determining whether this is necessary requires aggregating the demand plan and viewing it in aggregate by the constraint. So we have to start at the constraint level. But we also need to be able to look at the demand from the market view. This is that above the line or the unconstrained view. To do this, we'll need to be able to segment the S&OP family demand into something we call demand streams, or a more market-facing view. The market view may be by a specific kind of business, it might be by a sales channel, or whatever your go-to-market strategy is, whether it's make to stock, configure to order, or engineer to order, or it might be by sales geography. Demand accuracy measurement is at that demand stream level within the family and should be aimed at how am I using this measurement to improve demand planning, make sure I can use this to drive specific go-to-market strategies, and then track the results of these strategies, and ultimately can be used to assign accountability for demand accuracy and performance. We need both the market view and the constraint view for S&OP. But once again, the basis for the families should be at the constraint view and then further broken down by demand streams to achieve the market view. So I've covered the process, covered the family structure, and finally I'd like to cover how does this all come together being supported with data and the data visualization. You can think of an effective executive S&OP process as one where the process is both linked to your planning and execution systems like your ERP, and it provides feedback on the validity of the plans that are in these systems. Data is the key to these relationships. Having the right data at the right level of granularity is both important and necessary. S&OP data will highlight processes that are broken and drive accountability. Over the years, we've developed this standard visualization through something called the 5-section sheet. This is the visualization that we recommend using in order to pull together all that supporting data and present the story for the family. We call it the 5-section sheet because, well, there's 5 elements of data that are necessary to support S&OP decision making. And as I said, they're all pulled together in one place. So these 5 elements are bookings, which is your order inflow. What is our incoming demand? We have shipments, our order outflow. We have our backlog, which really is the buffer between bookings and shipments. We have production. What is our production plan and where does it sit relative to what our capability is? And finally, inventory, which is the buffer between shipments and production. The 5-section sheet is simply 5 sections of data shown at that right level for planning and discussion and decision making at the executive S&OP meeting. It gives everyone the right view to see the story of what's actually happening in the business and gives the team the ability to make decisions in the future. It's important to pull all of this data together into one view to avoid disconnects between what's presented by sales and what's presented by operations. The simple fact that the math needs to make sense, for example, previous backlog plus bookings minus shipments should equal future backlog, or previous inventory plus production minus shipments should equal future inventory. This simple math forces a discussion around reality. If the sales plan is disconnected from the supply plan, the difference will show in one of these numbers. A standard presentation used across your S&OP process is also very important. Everyone who interacts with the process learns how to use the same tool or the same visualization, eliminating the need to translate what's being presented as you move from one family to the next. A standard format means also that the process is more sustainable as people move in and out of roles and new people come into the organization. You have a common way of speaking about S&OP and the story behind each family. This also includes your executives. Each of the sections in the 5-section sheet includes a current plan and a previous plan. This helps identify how much is the plan changing from month to month, and in what horizon are most of these changes being introduced? Is most of the volatility in the next couple months, or is it somewhere out in the future? Actual data is also compared to the last plan, and this is also included on the 5-section sheet. The comparison of the two numbers also includes a tolerance level that identifies whether or not we are in control of the business. We'll typically show the last 3 months, but having access to more months of history is also recommended to give a more complete view of how in control is the business really. Finally, we also include some summary information for each section of the plan. Year-to-date numbers and current year expected numbers for shipments, bookings, and production indicate where you are compared to your fiscal year plans. Are we headed in the right direction? Is there enough year left to make it to our final plans? A rolling 12-month view, which really is the next 12 months, gives a directional indicator on where the business is going. In order to support this balancing above the line, the external view, and below the line, which is the constrained view, the level of granularity for the 5-section sheet data will be different. Bookings, shipments, and backlog should be tracked at the demand stream level. This means plans and actuals can be seen at the demand stream to help improve accuracy and hold the team accountable. Below the line, the data is summarized at the family level, which is how we recommend presenting it in the executive S&OP meeting. Really, there's a lot more that I could cover on the 5-section sheet, and I will dig into that in more detail in future videos. But hopefully you've gathered the basic sense of what we're doing here. So we've covered today really these three key fundamental building blocks to making S&OP work and really work effectively. First, a good monthly process. Second, the correct family structure, and this should be starting at the constraint level. And finally, support this with the right data and the right visualization. And for this, we recommend using the 5-section sheet. So hopefully in this video, you've gained some insight on how these three come together and will help you balance between unconstrained or the market view of the business and your constrained or internal view of the business, and really support the S&OP decision-making process. In our next 3 videos, I'll unpack each of these 3 points in a bit more detail to really help you get started. If you enjoyed this video and you found it helpful, give it a thumbs up. You can also subscribe to our channel and be notified when our next video is available, and to stay up to date with our bi-weekly S&OP how-to videos. And if you haven't taken advantage of our free assessment yet, you can head over to our website, www.dbmsys.com, and click on the S&OP assessment at the top. It takes you about 10 minutes to complete it, and you'll get valuable insight on how your current process stands up, and we'll provide some custom recommendations to help you improve your process. You can click on the link in the description to get there. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching today's video. Subscribe to our channel for more on implementing S&OP. You can learn more about how DBM can take your process to the next level by visiting our website, www.dbmsys.com. Thank you and take care.